What's up, guys? I'm Joe. Today I'm talking about the new Machine Head album, Catharsis. So Machine Head are back with their ninth studio album, one that is dividing fans. That seems to be the case with every album nowadays, but yet again, we have an album that people seem to either love or they hate. For me, the album is certainly a letdown. I don't think it's necessarily, bad. It's certainly not a terrible album. I think just that the disappointment factor of is what really weighs against it for me. The band is coming off a slew of records that I think are truly fantastic albums. Starting with The Blackening in 2007, an album that just has so much intensity, so much aggression, really packs a massive punch with lots of thrashy riffs, intense vocals, lots of groove metal oriented moments as well. And 2011's Unto the Locust actually managed to live up to the huge expectations set by The Blackening, which is an album that is considered to be a modern metal classic at this point. Unto the Locust took that sort of epic style of metal and just built on that some more. Kind of followed along the same lines of The Blackening, but managed to change it up a little bit. A song like Darkness Within, which is one of my personal favorites on the album, taking a more of acoustic approach, and it really builds up into this huge, epic song. And finally, 2014's Bloodstone and Diamonds saw a bit of a drop-off in quality for me, but nonetheless, I thought it was a really solid album. Looking back at it now in the context of the new record, you definitely see a bit of a darker turn with that one, and it's also a longer record than The Blackening and Unto the Locust, and now it seems like Catharsis has gone even longer than that, maybe a bit of a self-editing problem. But nonetheless, I thought Bloodstone and Diamonds was a pretty worthy follow-up to those two albums. And with all that being said, I could see and I could understand where it might be time to change things up. Just coming out with a fourth album in a cycle of like a certain type of sound you've been doing for like 10 years, I could see how that might seem monotonous, and I could see how they would want to try something different now. However, I'm not sure why the thought would be to go back to nu metal and go back to a sound that really didn't work for them in the past. Records such as The Burning Red and Supercharger are looked back with a lot of disdain from their fans. So to not only retread ground that hasn't really worked before, but to come out with a lot of nu metal based songs in 2018 just seems odd to me. That being said, it's not all nu metal. There are some solid moments on this album. I'll get to that in a little bit though, because the vast majority I find pretty disappointing. I really wasn't digging the singles that came out on this one. Some of them have actually grown on me. The title track, Catharsis, I actually think isn't bad. It has a lot of nu metal tendencies as far as the vocal delivery goes, and Rob Flynn kind of does the same kind of thing throughout a lot of songs on here. That kind of tortured sounding vocal, much in the vein of maybe Corey Taylor, or that band King 810. I don't know if it's 810 or 810 or whatever. Just a band that I'm not really a fan of, that kind of like spoken word, poetry-esque type of delivery. Flynn tries that quite a lot on this album. I'm not really digging that. So here on the title track, there are some moments like that where they get a little talky, I guess. But otherwise, the instrumental isn't too bad. There's some solid riffs like taking up the background. They're not really at the forefront, but they're there. What I don't like about the song is the very radio-friendly type chorus. It reminds me of something that like Five Finger Death Punch would do, which is a band that kind of started off okay, and then as they went on and as they got more commercial success, every song became, big heavy riff, screaming vocals, whatever, and then just the corniest chorus ever. I mean, if you look at Five Finger Death Punch's last record, it's full of that. That's what this song kind of reminds me of, which I don't really like seeing in Machine Head. And the chorus doesn't really come in full force till well into the song. The first pass-through of it really just breaks down the song, and it gets very slow, and it just almost grinds to a halt. And then it feels like it's almost resetting itself going back into the verse. And that's just like very monotonous to listen to. And this is one that I like, kinda. But something you see on this song and something that carries on through a lot of this record, the lyrics are just so on the nose. That's my main issue with the lyrical content. Obviously, you see a lot of reviewers, commenters, stuff like that, having a big problem with the SJW stance that Rob Flynn has taken lately. I mean, personally, I don't have a problem with musicians getting political. I think anyone should be political. Anyone should be aware of what's going on and speaking their voice, no matter what side you really land on. So that's not a problem for me. It's just the fact that it's like so obvious, like what he's saying. There's no kind of like poetic side to it or metaphorical or anything like that. It's just like, it's all right there. I mean, like, this is my catharsis. Can you feel my catharsis? Instead of like writing a song that serves as an emotional catharsis, he just ends up saying that that's what he's doing, and it just doesn't resonate with me. And when I start to think about it, it gets a little too goofy. Same can be said about songs like California Bleeding and Triple Beam, just these really weird, cringy lyrical moments. And probably the biggest offender for the people that don't like the SJW thing, the song Bastards, which again, I'm all for the message, but it's just like the delivery I don't think works very well. And juxtaposed with the musical aspect that's going on here, where like at times it sounds like a Mumford & Sons song, and other times it sounds like Machine Head being heavy. Like, I just don't know what they're really going for. Is this an uplifting song that's supposed to rally people together? Or is it an offensive song that's going for shock value, using words such as the N-word and, one of the F words that I won't say on this channel? I think the message just kind of gets unclear and kind of jumbled when you have all of that going on at once. But going back to some of the original singles, Beyond the Pales one has grown on me a little bit. Nice heavy riff, though, a little straightforward. The vocals in the chorus get a little, ugly. They don't quite sound right to me, but, otherwise I think it makes for an okay song. I like that it doesn't go too radio-friendly in there. I actually like Kaleidoscope, which it was probably my favorite of the 4 singles. But I've seen a lot of people saying it might be the worst of the 4 singles. I don't know. I mean, apart from the dumb hand claps in the beginning, I just think it has a lot of aggression, a lot of energy. Very thrashy, very punky. Just kind of a fun song, and just really amps things up after kind of slogging through a couple bad songs on here. And speaking of which, to go back to Triple Beam and harp on that a little bit, I mean, that one is just one that really employs that kind of talking, tortured vocal type thing that Flynn wants to do quite a lot on here. As far as the chorus goes, I don't think it's bad. It definitely brings the energy back up, which I like. Though it may not sound like it based on what I've said so far. I actually kind of have a soft spot for new metal. Grew up on bands like Korn and Slipknot. Though it's not really a genre I go back to too often, every now and then for nostalgic purposes it's good. But I feel like a song like Triple Beam takes more of a Limp Bizkit approach in the chorus direction and that kind of King 810, even though they're, more modern in the verses. Despite all of that, there are some pretty good moments on here. Volatile, the opening track, right in your face, very aggressive, great riffs. Delivery by Rob Flynn, very similar to Corey Taylor and Slipknot. I mean, this sounds very much like a Slipknot song, but I definitely think it is a solid opener and one of the better tracks on here. You actually get a nice couple tracks kind of buried in the middle of the album here that I think are really great and some of the best stuff on here. Screaming at the Sun is pretty solid. It takes a cool kind of rhythmic approach to the way the instrumental is going. Kind of reminds me of Gojira, kind of. Behind a Mask, a song I actually think is a pretty solid ballad. And as far as experimenting and trying different stuff, this is one of the more successful songs on here. I think they pull it off pretty well. Like I said, I was a fan of the song Darkness Within on Onto the Locust, which for the better part of the song is more of a slower, acoustic build-up type thing. This song Behind a Mask has some nice melody to it, some nice acoustic guitars. I even like how the acoustic guitars, make their way into the solo, which is pretty cool. And then finally, out of those 3, you have Heavy Lies the Crown, which is another one of my favorites on here. And again, I think pushes the envelope a little bit from the previous 3 records. It's definitely the closest to that kind of sound, that kind of grand epic metal type sound. But here you're hearing a lot of almost new wave of British heavy metal style riffs, especially more towards the beginning of the song. We have some heavy moments, some great kind of groove oriented moments as well. Overall, I think if they were going to push their sound like they wanted to and do something different and somewhat unexpected, these 3 tracks I think are the area of which they should have explored more deeply, rather than, a bunch of kind of new metal-like songs. Which, after that point, is what you ultimately get. You get a couple kind of forgettable ones. Yeah, so overall, I mean, for the most part, I'm pretty disappointed with the record. I don't think a lot of the songs that I criticize more harshly are really terrible. It's just that it's not where the band really excels. And you come face to face with that fact in the course of this album as well, where there are quite a few much better tracks and much better directions they could have taken themselves. So I'm feeling like a 2.5 out of 5 on this one. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to let me know what you think of the album in the comments, whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.